Can you hear me? Welcome back. So, like I said, we had 5 different things going on, but I think you've made a very smart choice in being here because this actually flows very nicely from the panel that was right before the break. And as you know, we were just talking about values. We were just talking about respect. We were talking about empathy. We were talking about the problems around increased nationalism, authoritarianism. And we have here union leaders, EI affiliate leaders, from 5 of the countries that are really facing this head-on right now. And this is both a strategy session as well as it is an ideas generation session. I think, I'm looking at Odile and I'm thinking she has something on Sunday happening too, so you'll probably be talking about that. This will be we'll be using interpretation language. So, vamos a hablar en español, en francés, en English, so make sure you have your headphones if you need them. I'm very, very pleased that Mary Boosted, who is from ATL originally and now will be one of the co-general secretaries of the new union in the UK. And we're very excited that she's agreed to host this because I'm not sure if in the chronology of time whether Brexit was the sort of first. I don't know, maybe Duterte came a little bit earlier, so we can talk about this. Temer was right in there, and Trump was a bit after, and we'll see on Sunday, right? So some of you are already there. Odile is really hoping she doesn't have to join you in that world. She assures me that she won't, right? Okay, good. But very, very much welcome to this. It's not just about. It's called so-called post-truth. We don't really believe that truth is dead, right? But this is what's being talked about, and our students are getting a lot of mixed signals. A lot of, don't listen to the press. Listen to me. Trump, the history teacher, doesn't even know that Andrew Jackson died before the Civil War. So these are very difficult times and very important times for educators. And there was something that Fred said at the International Summit at the Teaching Profession that I think also frames this. Our responsibility is greater than to a government agenda. Our responsibility is to the future. Our responsibility is to our students, to our colleagues, to rights themselves. And I think there is no better place to be than right here to talk about how do we move forward given all these different political challenges that are facing us in terms of helping our students and our colleagues and our unions navigate successfully and push back and actually win. So without further ado, Mary, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. And good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. I'm just wondering, do people want to move up so it can be a bit more cozy? Because otherwise it's very dark and there's people in the caverns of the back. And I'm actually hoping to be able to take questions and comments from the audience as well. So you'll have to keep on your toes. But if you fancy, somebody's moving back now because I've said that. Someone's moving back. So, but if you want to move up, then and come a bit closer, that might be helpful. So you really can take part in the debate. If you really want to stay in the background as a shrinking violet and not take part in the debate, that's absolutely fine. Right. Okay. So. We were invited here to talk about, so first of all, hello, I'm Mary Bousted. I'm General Secretary of the Association of Teachers and Lecturers, and from September I'll be Joint General Secretary of the National Education Union, which will be the largest education union in Europe. We'll have 450,000 members, and that's an amalgamation of my union, ATL, and the NUT, which is the largest education union in the UK. So we're looking to do that. We're looking to combine our forces in this larger union. And one of the reasons we're looking to do that is because we live in a post-truth society where it becomes more and more difficult for progressive forces who are in crisis throughout the world to get their message and their points across through the media, through a fractured media where there's a decline in print journalism, where the effect of Facebook and all the social media sites means that groups exist in echo chambers, reflecting back to each other their views, often uninformed by evidence or fact. So one of the reasons why we wanted to get together to form the National Education Union was to be a stronger progressive alliance against the alternative right and against in a post-truth world. Now, when I agreed to moderate the panel, I thought I'd better look at what post-truth actually, if there was a definition. And actually, post-truth was the most popular word. It was the most popular new word in the Oxford English Dictionary, and it got the award last year for the most influential word. And the Oxford English Dictionary defines post-truth as relating to or denoting circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and belief. And I'll read that again. Post-truth denotes circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief. And post-truth dominates a political culture in which debate is framed largely by appeals to emotion, disconnected from details of policy, and by the repeated assertion by politicians, post-truth politicians, of points in which factual rebuttals are ignored. So one lie spoken many times acquires validity. Terry Pratchett, a very famous comic author, says, "A lie can run while the truth is getting its boots on." And in post-truth world and in post-truth politics, that's certainly a key facet of this phenomenon. So in post-truth politics, politicians and campaigners continue to repeat their talking points, even if these are found to be untrue by independent experts or by the media. So to give an example from my country, from the UK, you will all know that very recently we voted to leave the European Union in a referendum which was very finely split. 52% of those who voted to leave the EU, 48% voted to remain, and the views of those 48 have largely since then been ignored. Their concerns have largely been ignored. Now then, when the EU referendum battle was on, the Vote Leave campaign, those were the campaigners voting to leave the EU, they had a battle bus in which they toured the country, doing rallies, persuading people to vote leave. And emblazoned on this bus was the slogan, "Let's give our National Health Service, our NHS, the 350 million a week that the EU takes every week. So let's give the NHS the 350 million pounds that the EU takes from Britain every week." This figure was described as potentially misleading by the UK Statistics Authority, but it figured prominently in the Vote Leave campaign, was on the website, and was repeated constantly by the Vote Leave campaigners, in particular Michael Gove, Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage. So it was strange that the day after the referendum, Nigel Farage said in an interview the day after the referendum, where people had voted to vote leave, where this figure of £350 million a week we will spend on the NHS if we vote leave. It was very interesting that the day after, Nigel Farage, the key UKIP politician behind voting leave, said that the figure had been a mistake. And it was always far more likely that he always knew. Now, he said it had been a mistake and he wished it hadn't been used. He didn't say it was a mistake and he wished it hadn't been used during the campaign. The reason he said it was a mistake the day after the election was because of the referendum, was that he knew it couldn't be substantiated. But it had done its work. It had done its work. It had been a very salient and powerful factor in vote leave. So, post-truth goes to war against facts, truths which do not support its proposition. As Michael Dean, the parliamentary sketch writer for a British newspaper, The Telegraph, says, facts are negative, facts are pessimistic, facts are unpatriotic. And so, Donald Trump's election coordinator, and now the White House advisor, Kellyanne Conway, can argue with all apparent conviction and seriousness that there are alternative facts. And Donald Trump, the master, the emperor of post-truth politics, and the ultimate spinner of fake news, creates fake news all the time, that he says that Europe is overrun by terrorism, that President Obama wasn't born in the USA. And Trump even mounts an assault on the pillars of democracy when he says that the judge who stopped his travel ban, he called him a so-called judge. So the judge who made this ruling isn't really a judge because he goes against my travel ban. And his latest advert, which has been refused to be played on the CNN News, Trump has accused the American media of misleading, misguiding, deceiving, and destroying. And I wonder, is he really describing himself? Post-truth politics flourishes in a world of professional political commentators which exploit the fragmentation of the mass news media, the decline of print journalism, declining readership for print journalism, and the constant places on social media where you can talk to yourself and other people like you. And in a world where every voice is legitimized as fact, is echoed by like-minded users who validate each other's opinions. But there's one thing I think that the progressive left need to understand very clearly, and it's this, that the right do post-truth much better than we do. And the right do post-truth so much better than we do because the right is unashamed in appealing to emotion rather than to facts and rather than to evidence. So we of the left work incredibly hard all the time to get the evidence to back up our views. The right do far less of that. It's far less important to them. What they do is appeal to emotion. They appeal to perceptions. And so if you say that patriotism is the last refuge of the scoundrel, there's lots of scoundrels who will say, as Donald Trump did, that the judges who voted against his travel ban are unpatriotic. They're on the side of the terrorists, not on the side of law. And we of the left work really, really hard all the time to do facts in contention with the post-truth reliance on belief and on perception and on emotion. So, we have a panel which is expert in all these issues, and I'd love to introduce them to you. And when I introduce them, I'd like them, as I introduce them, to just say a sentence of who they are and what they do. So, on my left here, we've got Fatima da Silva from CNTE from Brazil, sorry. So, can you just say what you do, who you are, and what's your interest in post-truth politics?
Yo soy Fátima da Silva, soy de la CNTE, que es la Confederación Nacional de Trabajadores de la Educación de Brasil, y afiliamos profesores y demás trabajadores de la educación de las escuelas públicas del país. También estoy como vicepresidenta de la Internacional de Educación para América Latina. Me interesa este tema porque tengo la certeza, somos todos seres políticos y donde estamos, no importa el espacio, estamos haciendo política diariamente y continuamente. Quer sea una política más restringida, pero también una política es general. Entonces, de esta... Ok. Somos seres y somos agentes políticos. Y cuando estamos ocupando puestos que es públicos, elegidos por nuestras bases, tenemos la obligación de ser vanguardia y apuntar los caminos colectivos.
Sorry, I'm not getting translation. No, I'm just getting, sorry, I'm just getting
What is translate?
Number 6. The back, left. No, the left one. This one. Yeah, 2, 6.
Okay? Yes, I can. Do carry on. Okay.
Sí.
Yeah.
Yo me presentaba ya diciendo de dónde soy, que soy de una organización que afilia profesores y demás trabajadores de la educación pública de Brasil, ¿no? Y dice que este tema es un tema inherente a toda la vida y los espacios que estamos. Y como nosotros estamos ahora ocupando espacios de dirección adentro de nuestras organizaciones, tenemos más la obligación de pensar, formular y apuntarnos caminos colectivos para superar lo que está puesto en este exacto momento en nuestros países y también en el mundo.
Thank you very much, Fatima. And from the Philippines, we've got Lorenzo Dinlean from TOPPS. And tell us a bit about yourself and your interest in post-truth politics.
Sure. I am Lorenzo Dinlayan III. I am the Vice President of the Teachers of the Philippine Public Sector. At the same time, I also teach in the college as well as in the graduate school, particularly in public administration. So my interests are really on governance and politics at the same time. And by the way, I'd like to include this, that I came all the way from a 57-hour travel exactly from our place. I rode in 5 planes just to reach Rotterdam. And maybe what interests us maybe now is that our president, our newly elected president, having been selected as the most influential person in the New York Times, maybe because of his anti-drug campaign now. And I am the chairperson also of the Public Administration Department. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Odile, you need no introduction from SNES, SNES FSU, but what's your sort of interest in post-truth politics, particularly in the light of the French presidential election?
Bonjour, donc je suis Odile Cordelier. Je vais parler en français. Je suis Odile Cordelier, membre du bureau exécutif du SNES FSU donc de France. Je suis responsable des relations internationales pour le SNES FSU et également vice-présidente du comité syndical européen de l'éducation, la région Europe de l'international de l'éducation. Le sujet que nous allons traiter ce matin est particulièrement important pour nous, syndicats, SNES FSU aussi, mais pour la France, puisque nous avons malheureusement une montée de l'extrême droite en France, avec la montée du parti de Marine Le Pen, le Front National, qui s'est qualifié, Marine Le Pen, qui a été qualifiée pour le 2e tour des élections présidentielles, qui aura lieu ce dimanche 7 mai. Et la montée de l'extrême droite est particulièrement inquiétante parce que ce parti n'est pas un parti politique comme les autres, mais c'est un parti qui est d'essence antidémocratique et xénophobe. Donc, mon objet sera de essayer de vous dire un peu ce que nous faisons, nous, au niveau du syndicat, dans les contenus d'enseignement auprès de nos élèves, pour apporter quand même des formations sur l'éducation à la citoyenneté, à l'esprit critique, ce qui permet aussi de remettre en cause des théories et de donner à nos élèves les clés de compréhension pour le monde de demain.
Thank you, Odile. And finally, last but certainly not least, is Denise Beck from AFT. So tell us a bit about yourself and your interest in post-truth politics.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Denise Specht, and I'm an elementary teacher from the state of Minnesota. I'm the president of our union called Education Minnesota. I'm an AFT vice president, and I'm also a member of the NEA. In my state, we have dual affiliation with both AFT and NEA, so we're very lucky. I would say that my interest specifically for public education professionals is that we are really the defenders of truth. We are the protectors of truth. There is truth out there, as David said, and we cannot allow the current system to be normalized. But specifically about Trump and the current world that we live in the United States is that we right now are the protectors of public education. Trump and his education secretary, Betsy DeVos, have one goal in mind, and that is to dismantle public education and privatize public education in the United States. And it is our mission to make sure that that does not happen and to make sure that everybody knows the truth about our public schools.
Yeah, I'm interested in that. I mean, when Trump came to power, he said immediately that American schools, American public schools, were awash with cash, and that you know, it was a terrible education system which was awash with cash. And he had a huge platform to say that. What was the union's reactions to that?
Well, you know, we've been hearing a lot of this for a long time. I mean, before Trump, we have seen attacks on public education all over the place, from our profession, trying to deprofessionalize the educators in our profession. But before Trump, we've been seeing a lot of things, like the cleansing of textbooks, the ignoring of science. So when Trump came into the administration and his billionaire Secretary of Education came into office, it was really nothing new to us, because we've actually had billionaires trying to tell us what to do for a long time.
Yeah, I'll come back to that. Yeah. Lorenzo, President Duterte said in his election campaign that although he was very saddened that a woman was gang raped, she was very beautiful and he wished he'd been there first. President should have come first. And he has supported the violent extrajudicial execution of drug dealers, but the strong charges that many of the people who've been executed weren't drug dealers at all. So obviously, you have a president who is prepared to say the most outrageous things and get elected and support extrajudicial killings of his own citizens, and indeed boast that he has killed them himself. How do educators and how do unions work within that context?
Right. Thank you, Mary, for the question. That's a very interesting question. What's so interesting about this is that even before Duterte got elected last year, then he was already blatant. He was already blunt about his passion, practically for changing the Philippines, particularly on anti-drug campaign. And during the elections, he got at least 15 million people voting for him, while the second one only got 9 million. You know what I'm saying? So the problem here is that even the unions in the Philippines are not really one into that. Many are those who really support him, while others do not. Those who actually go to the street. Now, going back to the question, how do unions actually even address to this particular issue? Do we go against? Do we support? Or what? Now, I would like maybe to correct on that point that maybe Duterte, it's not really because I'm not really for or against on issues. I think he did not categorically say that he would go for extrajudicial killing. I think what's so intriguing about his administration is killing drug addicts, big or small for that matter, even without due process. Because, I don't know, maybe history would tell us that in the Philippines, for example, there are at least 4 million Filipinos, according to the list of the president, for that matter, who has been engaged into these anti-drugs at that. So what did unions do? It's that we collaborated, particularly TOPS and ACT and other big organizations, and tried to list down possible things on how can we reach and lobby through our House of Representatives, through our Senate, and that our voice can be heard. What we are against of, we are not against about the campaign anti-drugs. What we are against of is the manner, the approach, the strategy by which people are being killed without due process. And I think that is categorically not accepted, especially in a democracy that we have.
Good. And Fatima, recently your president, Dilma Rousseff, was impeached for the accusation was financial corruption. The left said, well, actually, this is just a right-wing coup. And her challenger was then himself had to resign because of corruption charges. So what is the political context which, as you, as a unionist, as a trade unionist, an education trade unionist, operate within Brazil? And how do you manage to get a message across in a very febrile political atmosphere that you're currently under?
Sí, mira, gracias por la pregunta, porque nos permite más una vez reafirmar la posición. O que houve em Brasil foi golpe de Estado de los tiempos modernos. E vale reforçar que em América Latina já são 3 países que têm este estilo de golpe de Estado. Primeiro começou com Honduras, depois com Paraguai e ultimamente com meu país, que é Brasil. O que passou? Foi bando de deputados, montão de deputados desonestos, involucrados em corrupção, sacando uma mulher, primeira presidenta da história de Brasil, elegida legitimamente por 54 milhões de votos. Então, é 54 milhões de votos, uma democracia que 347 deputados, na sua grande maioria homens de direita, corruptos, lhe sacaram o mandato desta presidenta, uma mulher íntegra e honesta. E por que isto? Porque está por detrás a questão da nova ordem econômica mundial, de los BRICS, desta nova ordem econômica, e a questão do petróleo. Tudo indica que Brasil, em los próximos 50 anos, será dos mais grandes produtores de petróleo do mundo, e está por detrás todos os interesses. Nós, enquanto sindicatos, estivemos em la calle e seguimos em la calle. Em primeiro momento, em defesa da democracia e em contra do golpe. E depois, com todas as consequências que tem o golpe. Brasil hoje está vivendo uma ditadura parlamentar que chegou a esta situação por los meios de comunicação, também por los meios econômicos e por la própria divisão da sociedade, que parte não aceitava as políticas de inclusão social que o governo Lula e o governo Dilma estava proporcionando à população. É uma luta de classes e hoje estamos em processo de ditadura, sacando todos os direitos. E enquanto sindicato, estamos na calle, na defesa dos direitos dos trabalhadores e da democracia no país.
Thank you very much. Adil, I mean, I'm thinking in France and Marine Le Pen, and the thing that she does so successfully is the politics of division. So France would be great if it wasn't in the EU, if we didn't have all these immigrants. France has got to be first. I want to be patriotic. The other side isn't patriotic. And I'm wondering how your union, how teachers in France, in multicultural classrooms, with students from many nationalities, citizens of France, how teachers are dealing with the discord and the not so vague level of threat that many of these students and many citizens will be feeling because of the rise of Marine Le Pen, who has given up being president of the National Front, but we all know that she actually is temporarily given up. How does this place teachers in particular in French schools?
Merci pour votre question, Mary. Avant de répondre à cette question, je voudrais quand même apporter des précisions en disant de façon un peu rapide et schématique les raisons pour lesquelles nous avons ce bouleversement politique en France, pour quelles raisons nous avons cette montée des idées d'extrême droite avec le parti de Marine Le Pen. Il faut quand même comprendre que ce parti politique, le Front National, a prospéré au cours de ces dernières années en utilisant les reculs sociaux, en utilisant en fait le racisme comme un ciment pour agglomérer, j'allais dire, les colères des populations, des gens les plus fragilisés dans la société française. Je dis bien des gens les plus fragilisés, fragilisés par la crise économique, frappés par le chômage, donc des difficultés de trouver un emploi. Donc finalement une situation dans laquelle nous retrouvons dans nos établissements scolaires du second degré des élèves qui vivent dans un milieu difficile au plan économique et j'allais dire aussi au plan culturel, j'y reviendrai. Il faut quand même bien comprendre, et je sais que beaucoup d'entre vous, lorsque je les rencontre dans les conférences ou les séminaires internationaux, me posent cette question. Il faut aussi quand même bien comprendre que le parti de Marine Le Pen aussi a prospéré sur les échecs ou l'absence de politique sociale mise en œuvre par le gouvernement Hollande. Ce parti a pu prospérer, a pu répandre ses idées qui imprègnent aussi nos écoles, qui imprègnent aussi malheureusement certains de nos personnels, certains de nos enseignants, parce qu'il y a eu un ensemble de politiques faites par le gouvernement Hollande qui étaient sur une ligne de soumission des intérêts des travailleurs aux nécessités, j'allais dire, des marchés financiers. Ça, c'est un point que je voulais quand même vous rappeler. La deuxième chose, et ça, c'est très surprenant, et je vous avoue que même nous, SNES FSU, si nous avons, il y a 3 jours, donné un signe, un message très clair par rapport à l'élection, au vote qui aura lieu ce dimanche 7 mai, nous disons très clairement que pas une seule voix ne doit aller au Front National. Nous sommes quand même aussi en difficulté pour comprendre les raisons pour lesquelles une femme politique qui met clairement en avant le renoncement à des libertés publiques, à des libertés individuelles, au droit d'expression, à l'exercice du droit syndical. Je ne sais pas si vous le savez, mais elle n'est évidemment pas favorable aux organisations syndicales, qui est totalement aussi opposée à ce qu'on appelle le dialogue social. Alors déjà que le dialogue social au niveau de mon pays, la France, est quasiment inexistant, imaginez-vous si nous avons Marine Le Pen comme présidente élue dimanche 7 mai au soir, imaginez dans quelle situation les syndicats nous allons nous retrouver. Et sur le plan éducatif, permettez-moi une remarque. J'ai eu l'occasion, évidemment, de lire son programme sur l'éducation. Il y a un point qui fait, j'allais dire, bondir les collègues, donc les professeurs, les gens, j'allais dire, éduqués. Elle est contre la liberté pédagogique des enseignants. Et elle l'écrit clairement, elle le dit clairement. Donc, tout ça pour dire qu'on est quand même, nous sommes quand même dans une situation extrêmement difficile. Alors, là, pour répondre plus maintenant à votre question, Marie, que faisons-nous au sein du syndicat? Alors, nous ne travaillons pas seuls, hein, nous avons quand même aussi des plateformes communes avec d'autres organisations syndicales. Mais ce que je voulais dire là, simplement, c'est que nous essayons à travers certains contenus d'enseignement, notamment l'éducation à la citoyenneté, qui est enseignée dans les écoles secondaires, du secondaire inférieur, les collèges, comme du secondaire supérieur, les lycées, une demi-heure par semaine seulement aux élèves. Nous essayons de faire en sorte, avec toutes les limites, malheureusement, de montrer aux élèves en quoi des valeurs, des principes, des notions qui sont fondatrices aussi de notre République française, mais des principes qui sont au cœur, j'allais dire, du développement humain, tels que la liberté, l'égalité, la fraternité, sont des valeurs clés, des valeurs de base sur lesquelles nos élèves doivent et peuvent se développer. Notre idée au SNES FSU, c'est qu'il est important que dans les programmes d'enseignement, il y ait cette notion du vivre ensemble, il y ait cette notion du respect de la diversité. C'est très difficile à faire dans les faits. Rien n'est parfait. Nous n'avons pas de recette clé. Mais je crois que aussi la responsabilité du syndicat, c'est à travers les programmes d'enseignement, de jouer, évidemment, de faire jouer un rôle aux enseignants. Et je termine sur ce point. attention, nous sommes là pour débattre aussi de la responsabilité, j'allais dire, des enseignants, de la profession enseignante, des personnels d'éducation en général et du mouvement syndical enseignant en général par rapport à au développement de valeurs fondamentales, de valeurs communes que nous partageons sur l'éducation publique de qualité. Mais ne demandons pas trop non plus aux enseignants et au personnel. L'éducation ne peut pas tout faire. Elle peut faire, mais elle ne peut pas tout faire dans un monde qui est profondément divisé, dont on voit bien que les équilibres sont remis en cause. Merci.
Thanks, Lydia. And you've got us on to the next issue, really. But I'm very taken by teachers can do a lot, but we can't do it all. And that in France there is a citizenship, half an hour a week, and that's where you and your members, your teachers, try to inculcate an understanding of what it is to be a citizen, what the laws and what the principles of French democracy are, and the principles on which the state is founded. I'll come back to what might happen in those lessons. But Denise, I mean, when we talked this morning, you were saying to me that one of the things that you were most interested in and most concerned about was how in classrooms we educate children and young people not simply to be consumers of information, true or fake or otherwise, but critical consumers, and what the teacher's role and what the educator's role in classrooms is. Could you talk a little bit about that?
For sure. I think that's one of the hardest things right now in this environment. You know, we are facing privatization, industrialization, commercialization of public education. And at the same time, we know we need to be protecting and being able to teach critical thinking, inquiry, and all of the good things that we know our students need in this post-truth world. So we have to find that balance. And in our world of the over-testing of the student and teaching to the test, quite often problem-solving falls by the wayside. AFT President Randy Weingarten talks about 4 pillars of powerful public education, and one of those pillars is the aspect of powerful learning. And I believe that we as educators need to stand up for and ensure that our students are engaged and getting the best wide variety of training that we can. You know, we have to talk about powerful learning, how we can ensure that for our students. AFT also supports Share My Lesson, and many of you have probably heard about that. If you haven't, check it out on the internet. But when I looked up fake news on Share My Lesson, there were 182 resources right there ready to go. So our unions are making sure that our union educators are getting as many resources and supports that they can. But we also need each other. We need to work together. One thing that we found post-Trump, we call it the Trump effect. We see the Trump effect in our schools. We see more bullying. We see more violence. We see more hate. And as educators, it is our responsibility to make sure that our students are welcomed and feel that our public schools are safe places, safe havens. So we're doing a lot of that in our schools and within our union to ensure that all students know that they are welcome. But the other thing that our unions, I think, absolutely need to do right now in this world, and Odile mentioned this in her comments, is that we really have to defend our rights and protect our ability to have a strong voice at the workplace so that we can teach the things we know we need to teach, that we can call out the practices that we know are bad for our students. And lastly, it does take community. We are taking it to the streets in the United States for public education. In fact, on May 1st, there were thousands of marches all over the country asking people to build schools, not walls. And the public is engaged in that. In fact, when it came to Betsy DeVos, the education secretary, and in her appointment, I know that there were just as many parents and students contacting Congress in opposition of Betsy DeVos as there were educators. So it's become very uniting in the United States around public education, and we need to continue that.
Thank you. Lorenzo, so I'm going to really put you on the spot here now, because you're working in a very difficult situation. So one of the things which is levelled at teachers and teacher unions by the alternative right and by the right in general is that if we challenge the idea that there are too many immigrants, or that executing drug dealers isn't extrajudicially isn't a good way to go about things, or that we challenge some of the false news, the false facts, that somehow we're indoctrinating. And it's not enough for us, for example, in America, not to like Donald Trump. It's not enough for us just, and I will come to Fatima on this, it's not enough to say we don't like, because that's just another opinion against that. So, and given the fact that facts have so much less salience and traction than beliefs, how as educators do we navigate that very complex world? Because in every classroom in America, there'll be the children of parents who voted for Trump and want the wall built and want, in Brazil there'll be the parents, the children of parents who wanted the president impeached. There will be children in France who, as parents, will vote for Marine Le Pen, who will believe that France is being overrun by immigrants, who do believe you need strong government akin to fascism in order to deal with France apparently losing its power in society and losing its power. So, it's not easy, is it? It's not easy. How do we square those circles or navigate the sharks, if you want?
You know what, in the Philippines, sometimes it's just easy to topple a president. I mean, for some of you who are into politics, right? We have Joseph Estrada before, who has resigned. We have then President Arroyo, who was almost impeached, right? So this is a democratic country who has been colonized by a lot of countries.
Yeah.
I'd like to say this, by the US, 44 years, by the Japanese for 3 years, by the Spain for 333 years.
Yeah.
I'm saying this because our context, our perspective of education, and not only of education, but practically of everything, have something to do with our past, of what have we had, who were we, and where we are at now. We have to be competitive.
Yeah.
We have to be at the map on the globe. But that's just so difficult because the perspective of our president is just so different. I mean, we may have voted for him or not. The point is, he is the elected president. But it does not mean we can support all his programs, those that we agree on, but programs that we do not, such as the extrajudicial killing that you have mentioned. He has not been 1 year since he was elected last year. But hey, 5,000 people have been killed for drug-related cases. And I think at least 2,000 of these are extrajudicial killing. So what we actually do, Mary, is that number matters. We couldn't just work as tops, teachers of the public sector, to which I represent. We have to go hand in hand with other organizations. We create social media, FB page, our newsletters, our basic labor organization, training-based needs. We call for protests, information dissemination. We support legislative bill. I mean, we thought that once we are seen in media, I think the president would. Well, on a lighter side, I would say that in the perspective of classroom management, this is how we actually, I'd like to follow through what Denise said earlier on engagement. We always want our students to be engaged, especially so that I teach in the college as well as in the graduate school. And many of these graduate students are really chief of their office chiefs, that is. We want them to become influenced. We want them driven. We want them directed. We want them focused. We want them involved in any political agenda of the government. We want them speak up through radio. We want them speak up through media in whatever form of that matter, so that the president would be able to hear not only what the teachers want, but what we actually do not want about the program of the government. So this is just so difficult because maybe it's too early to preclude what the president's thoughts are. Because despite of these news, you know what, Mary, I have to be honest with you, like the trust rating of the president remains to be so high,
Yes.
at least in the Philippines.
Yes.
I mean, I haven't heard since, how many elections? 3, since I was a witness, that 85% of his trust not rating
Yeah.
among, despite all these times.
Yes, yes.
So what we actually do as unions is that we act, of course, as vanguards, as protectors, making it sure that especially the rights of the teachers are protected. We diverted especially to issues, for example, such as our low wage, unemployment. I think these are the same issues throughout the world. Poor working conditions. We make sure that they are protected. And most especially that everyone accused of something should undergo the due process of law.
Yeah, fine. Fatima, how do educators, how do teachers in Brazil deal with political turmoil and deal with the post-truth politics in their classrooms? And what do the children, what are the things which the children and young people, what are the post-truths which they believe, which are powerful in the classroom and powerful, and the ideas that your members have to deal with in their daily work as they teach children?
El mundo está en el revés. Parece que nosotros que defendemos los derechos humanos, el estado de bienestar social, que defendemos las causas justas, somos poquitos y con esta tal pós-verdad, ellos son la mayoría. Y prueba de esto es que ganan la grande parte también de las poblaciones internas dentro de los países. La cuestión de la vida no es la cuestión de un juicio justo o de algo judicial, es como un derecho. El Estado y las personas, ninguno tiene derecho de sacar la vida de otra persona. Lo que tiene que el Estado es promover integración para quien comete cualquier acto de delincuencia, cual sea la naturaleza. Y la educación tiene que tener la claridad, que no es salvando su cuestión profesional o haciendo de las clases una pequeña isla que vamos a tener arreglado los problemas. O sea, tenemos que tener a conciencia de este rol y de este papel social. Cuando las fronteras están más nítidas y cuando cosas que ya pensamos que teníamos superados están volviendo con tanta verdad y con tanta intensidad adentro del mundo y adentro del país. Estos espacios de la Internacional de Educación tienen que servir para reforzar que no importa el continente donde estamos y el idioma que hablamos, estamos defendiendo los mismos principios. ¿Y qué principio es este? Derechos humanos, derecho a la educación, ofertada y garantizada por el Estado, donde el público sea la política de Estado y no el mercado para regular servicios de educación y servicios de salud. En Brasil, somos más que el golpista actual que está de plantón, el señor Michel Temer, que no tuvo votos, pero está allá como presidente. En Estados Unidos, tengo certeza, claridad, que somos más que Trump, pero hay un mundo antes de Trump y vamos a ver qué va a ser después de Trump. ¿Qué estamos haciendo en la educación y en las clases en Brasil en una forma de resistencia? En este proceso todo, entre tantas barbaridades que el gobierno está cometiendo, está intentando aprobar una ley que llamamos Ley de la Mordaza, o sea, que tapa la boca de los profesores y de los maestros en clases, poniendo supervisión y poniendo sanciones a los maestros que hable de política, que hable de un análisis del modelo de Estado, ¿no? Y por parte de los estudiantes también el gobierno implantó una reforma de la secundaria. ¿Qué hace esta reforma en resumen? Entrega, na verdad, la secundaria, en la instancia media del país, la iniciativa privada. Y los estudiantes organizaron, movilizaron y ocuparon millares de escuelas en contra de esta reforma de la secundaria. Y nos sorprendió enquanto maestros, porque eran jóvenes de 12, 13, 14 años que adentro de la escuela y con una organización increíble que nos sorprendió diciendo, estamos en contra de esta política, ¿no? Y también en cuanto a educadores, ayer se cerró un espacio muy importante que tenía la educación en Brasil, que era el Foro Nacional de Educación. El gobierno por decreto sacó este foro donde estaba toda participación. Também o Conselho Nacional de Educação, que é um conselho muito importante em Brasil, porque regula as políticas educativas. Foi o presidente golpista atual, sacou os nomes que veniam da sociedade civil e que veniam do campo da educação pública e pôs conselheiros do campo da educação privada. Incluso o operacionador de Pearson em Brasil, hoje é um conselheiro nacional de educação. O que estamos fazendo? As resistências necessárias, entendendo que educar é um ato libertário e é um ato que dá ao sujeito a possibilidade também de ter discernimento. Ou seja, se alguns querem ser favorável ao governo golpista de Michel Temer, que seja, pero que seja conscientemente, sabendo os lados que se defendem, as políticas que se defendem e tal. Ou seja, a educação não é para doutrinar, pero é para possibilitar opções e possibilitar discernimento do que fazer e que lado que tomar. Agora temos claridade, o que defendemos está com nossa gente e está com nossos pueblos.
Thank you, Fatima. Denise, I'm really interested in if I've got this right, in the US, each school district decides what textbooks, the textbooks are a matter for the electorate and for elected politicians and the curriculum. And there is a much, as an outsider looking in, you always have to be careful about what you say, but it appears to me that teachers in the USA, if they would not be able to talk, as Fatima has done, about defending freedom, defending the right to own the curriculum, defending the right to public education, that those would be political issues which were very difficult to discuss. Do the teachers feel under some pressure? Are they in a very difficult situation? Or am I wrong about that?
No, I think you're right. Look, the same people who want to dismantle public education are the same people who want to tear unions down. I mean, there is a direct correlation, at least in the United States. In states where you have strong unions, you have strong public education systems. So it's kind of a two-prong attack, really. You attack the unions, you weaken their voice, you corporatize the profession, a business model of churn and burn, hire them cheap, get them out before they become too educators, before they come too expensive. That is also happening at the same time that privatizers and billionaires are trying to tear down the system. So we're seeing this two-prong approach, and it's definitely related.
Yeah. And how do teachers deal with that? Because that gives them they're very insecure. So, say a pupil comes in and says, and in a class which is a mixed-race class, well, President Trump is right, all these Hispanics, we should build the wall, get the illegal immigrants out of the country. I mean, how, and you're under that sort of much more contested area. The public space is very contested within the school.
Right. I have never seen educators more angry and unifying around a resistance than ever before. Up until the Trump election, morale in education was awful. In Minnesota, we have a teacher shortage. Nobody wants to become a teacher. And when they do, they leave after 5 years because they're unsupported. It's isolating. They can't afford it. Their college debt is too high. So we have this continual churn in our system. Now that Trump has been elected, I've seen that morale, that sadness in the profession really turn into anger. They want to do something about it. They are tired of this. So it's unifying, and it's I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because of it.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now is a bit unusual, but I think we should have some interaction here. So I'm going to take questions or comments from you, which I will then repeat for the camera so that we can hear that, to which the which the panel may want to respond. So is there anybody who wants to make a point, ask a question, say what's happening in that? Yes, to begin.
Hi, I'll try and keep it simple.
So there's a mic coming.
Hi there, my name's Bart. I'm from Curie in England. I wanted to pick up on something that Lorenzo alluded to in one of his answers, because I think it's worth considering. At a global, at an international level, it seems to me what some of the sort of the issue here is partisanship. It's the idea that society is dividing. So what you saw with Brexit and with Donald Trump is that quite a disparate group of people ultimately unified. So in the United States, Republicans who wouldn't necessarily, a lot of whom didn't agree with Donald Trump, ultimately decided in the election that they preferred him to Hillary Clinton. They were able to unify around him. And you saw with Brexit, you have groups of people who are in favour of essentially turning the UK into a kind of northwestern European Singapore, grouping together with people who would be horrified by that idea, but they all voted the same way. So there's this kind of rather paradoxical process where the right, which believes in individual action and responsibility, unifies around this idea, while the left, which believes in collective action and responsibility, ends up sort of riven with division. And so I wonder if maybe one of the things that's worth considering in how to respond to this process is it possible to sort of fracture that coalition on the right? Because, for example, there are some policies that people like Donald Trump and Theresa May advocate, which I think people in this room would agree are a good idea. So, for example, in the UK, Theresa May has talked about, don't know if I believe it, but she's talked about boosting infrastructure spending where we have lagged behind the OECD average for decades. And that, I think, is something that teachers in general would agree is a good idea, even if they don't like the messenger. And what you're seeing with Donald Trump is that although he was a good campaigner, he's a terrible politician. And everything he's touching is falling to pieces. So that coalition is not holding together actually in government around things like healthcare and so on. So I wonder if what I'm curious about is there something that teacher unions can do to try and seize on things that they could agree with in the policy platforms of this movement, and use that as a means of fracturing the coalition. And basically my question is that viable? Is it worthwhile considering, or is it too risky and dangerous? What do people think about
Okay, so I'll take a few more questions, but the first question is, can teacher unions be an insurgency into the right and agree with some of their policies in order to fracture the right? Because we would not want to ally with teacher trade unions. That's a very innovative concept. Let's have a think about that. Yes. Then next, I'll do three.
Buenas tardes, soy Mario Aguilar de Chile, voy a hablar en español. Ha sido muy interesante conocer las experiencias de la brutalidad que se instala en muchos lugares del mundo. Por supuesto, eso no es solo de los países que están ahí. Las fuerzas regresivas están muy fuertes en muchos lugares. Pero me queda una inquietud cuando se dice que la posverdad se basa en creencias, emociones y percepciones. Y explicaría, ¿no es cierto?, según entendí, eso explicaría por qué se llega a propuestas tan irracionales, como Trump, Le Pen y otros extremismos de derecha, fascistas, etc. Pero mi duda es si acaso la verdad, entre comillas, la verdad que hay antes de la posverdad, ¿acaso no se basa también en creencias, emociones y percepciones? Solo que son creencias mejores, percepciones mejores y emociones más positivas. Creo que ahí podemos equivocarnos si creemos que antes habría algo que no es emocional, que no es de percepciones, que no es basado en creencias, que sería, comillas, objetivo, cuando hoy día muchos pensamientos y estudios muestran que la emoción no puede estar nunca fuera de una percepción de la realidad, que las creencias culturales, ideológicas y de todo tipo sí influyen en lo que percibimos y en lo que tenemos como postura. Entonces, más que querer que no existan creencias, percepciones y emociones, es promover mejores creencias, promover mejores emociones y promover mejores percepciones. Y ahí estaría el papel que los educadores podemos jugar, que puede ser muy importante. Esa es mi inquietud y mi pregunta que les dejo lanzado.
Thank you. So perhaps we got it wrong all the time. Perhaps there's no such thing as objective truth, that truth is always a part of our culture, our ideology, our perceptions, and rather than objecting to the rights, what we give misuse of lies and facts, perhaps we should be promoting positive alternatives rather than arguing with them over whether they're telling the truth or not. And there's one gentleman here, and then I'll let the panel respond to whichever bits of those questions they want to respond to.
Yes,
do give your name as well.
My name is Edem Adubra at UNESCO, from UNESCO. My question and comment related to the previous speakers as well. When I was listening to each of you, I was brought to refer to what we heard yesterday about integrity. In each of your countries, around the issue, your search for quality for all, you are bound to cling to certain principles. And you rightly said that in the classes, in the classroom, in the unions, you have people who support Le Pen, you have people who support other people. And my question is how the unions that you represent here can stand against the blame that there is politicization of trade unions around educational issues, and how can you claim that the education quality for all, is at the center of your fight, whereas you can easily identify to one political trends at the same time, which legitimately, as the colleague said, is your perception of who represents the truth, who represents the quality, the right way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've got three really good points there. Can teacher unions, can we reposition ourselves so that we're not constantly just in opposition to, but we can say which aspects of a right programme would we agree with? I have to say that we're just moving into election. We had a Secretary of State for Education, Justine Greening, Conservative politician, who actually, in certain respects, did some very good things in her short period of office. And I had a big row within my union about whether I should or should not say, actually, when she stopped qualified teacher status being abandoned, that was a very good thing. We had to support her in doing that. So there is a big, how do you position yourselves with the right, particularly when they're in the ascendancy as they are? Maybe we're wrong. Maybe we should be thinking more about how do we make use of people's feelings and emotions rather than what the left does most of the time, which is, well, these are the facts. Facts get poor traction sometimes. And how can we claim that equality for all is at the centre of our fight? Lorenzo, would you like to start? You can take all of those in whatever order you want.
Yeah, great questions and points, and I don't have to argue with the gentleman from Chile, considering that there can be a lot of views, really, especially that we come from different parts of the world, and I believe that we have different perceptions about something, but I respect that. With regard to the first, I would say that mainly, for example, between US and the Philippines, there are two-party system. We are a multi-party system. In other words, it's kind of a bit complicated, really. Even the unions have different stands. That's why earlier I said that number matters. The bigger number of the organizations is, then the stronger you are, the stronger voice you have in the country. Now, I think there was a question earlier whether it's viable, for example, whether talking with the left and all. You know what? Our president, President Duterte, who was the former mayor of the biggest city in the world in terms of land area, was catapulted to the presidency. And you know what? What's so nice about it? Because he is the closest president among the leftists. So it's in other words, we unions, for example, whenever we trade something to the president, he would listen. He would gladly open his arms to you. But the question is, will he succumb to what we wanted? Not all, because president, whatever he says, then he'll do it. Whatever he says, like Trump, sorry to say that, they're likened So I think it's viable. My only concern here is that I want our unions not just only entail dialogue. We want our plans directed.
Yeah.
We want our plans acted. We want our plans have outputs, have outcomes. You know what I'm saying? Like no matter how many, even if we only have 3 main goals for this year, then we believe that these are the strongest issues that Filipino teachers are confronted with. Then we really have to fight for that, rather than doing a lot of stuff, talking a lot of issues and dialogue, and then after the conference, it becomes futile.
Yeah.
And then let me take on the last point. I think that's also a great point on quality for all. I and Denise last night were talking about quality of education. In the Philippines, we have it's a small country with over 100 million, but we have 111 state universities and colleges scattered all over the 7,107 islands. Did you imagine that? Plus thousands of elementary and high schools. Quality, I think that's an issue. The university where I teach, we have 25 campuses. And recently, the Commission on Higher Education, meaning the commission on the one in charge with the college and the universities, demanded that all our campuses should be closed. Why? Because of quality for all, or quality for education issue. Those in the far-flung areas, we don't really provide so much with quality teachers, the resources, and all. Know what I'm saying? So how do we do that? What do unions do? So we prioritize the schools and even our partners living in the far-flung areas. We don't have so much problem with those in the locality, in Manila and also in the urban areas. What we are really so concerned about are our friends, our brothers and sisters in the far-flung areas, with which are so deprived of the quality of education that we have. So the trend now in the Philippines in terms of education is that we subject ourselves to accreditation, even to international accreditation, to make sure that at least some of our areas like faculty, curriculum, support to students, our physical facilities, our extension projects, research, etc., are complying with what the international standards do, as well as even with ISO for that matter.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Odile, any or all of those points you can answer.
Moi, ce qui me frappe à travers les questions qui ont été posées et les choses que nous avons dites en commun, les 4 représentants de ce panel, c'est que nous sommes quand même dans un monde post-vérité où enseigner est évidemment éminemment complexe, mais en même temps, où militer, c'est-à-dire être acteur dans une organisation syndicale, et en particulier dans une organisation syndicale enseignante, est devenu quand même de plus en plus difficile. Pourquoi ? Simplement parce que, à des niveaux bien sûr différents, selon nos pays, il y a des questionnements très forts venant des autorités politiques, de ce qu'on appelle les décideurs politiques, du rôle que peuvent jouer les organisations syndicales, en particulier les organisations syndicales de l'éducation. Et pourquoi de l'éducation ? Parce que, si je prends l'exemple de mon pays, même s'il y a une relative faiblesse des organisations enseignantes de l'éducation et la formation, c'est aussi le lieu où il y a des syndicats qui résistent à la montée d'idées d'extrême droite, à cette boue qui inonde à la fois le pays, mais j'allais dire qui imprègne, et je vous l'ai déjà dit, nos écoles. Donc prenons garde à cela, parce que c'est un mouvement que moi j'observe en France et que j'observe aussi malheureusement beaucoup au niveau européen. On n'a pas parlé ici de ce qui se passe en Allemagne. Il y a eu aussi une montée des idées d'extrême droite en Allemagne et nos camarades allemands syndicalistes luttent de façon virulente évidemment contre cette montée de l'extrême droite, mais c'est quand même très préoccupant par rapport évidemment aux valeurs que nous défendons. Deuxième point que je voulais dire, et je voulais revenir sur l'éducation à la citoyenneté dont je vous ai parlé. Je voulais quand même simplement vous dire une chose, du point de vue des enseignants, parce que c'est important de dire aussi ce que les enseignants ressentent et nous disent dans leur pratique au quotidien. Ils nous disent qu'il y a quand même une difficulté à éduquer à la citoyenneté par rapport à ce que le ministère de l'Éducation nationale nous demande. Ce sont les professeurs d'histoire-géographie qui assurent cet enseignement, mais aussi d'autres enseignants, d'autres disciplines. Moi, je suis professeur d'anglais en lycée et j'estime avoir ma part à jouer, mon rôle à jouer dans cette éducation à la citoyenneté. Ce que je voulais simplement dire ici, c'est que éduquer à la citoyenneté, au niveau des autorités éducatives nationales, c'est malheureusement uniquement montrer en quoi on est obéissant aux lois. Et il y a un exemple qui est sur le devant de la scène. On nous demande aussi de défendre, d'assurer la promotion de l'armée, de la défense nationale. Donc c'est quand même extrêmement compliqué aussi par rapport aux tâches que nous avons. Et en fait, beaucoup d'enseignants syndiqués au FSU nous disent ce qui est important, c'est avant tout d'assurer l'éducation à une citoyenneté, c'est une citoyenneté critique qu'il faut mettre en avant et pas autre chose. Et ça, c'est extrêmement difficile à mettre en œuvre. Pour terminer, simplement, je voulais dire que moi, je suis très frappée aussi parce que Fatima, Denise et Lorenzo ont dit toujours sur le rôle de l'organisation syndicale et de ses adhérents pour être une force qui a de l'influence sur les décisions politiques. Je crois que nous sommes tous confrontés à cela. De même que l'International de l'éducation, quand nos leaders de l'International de l'éducation discutent directement avec des représentants de la Banque mondiale, avec l'UNESCO, avec des représentants de l'OCDE, ont aussi cette capacité à mettre en place un rapport de force qui nous permet d'aller dans le bon sens. Et j'espère pour conclure que dimanche soir, dans notre pays, il n'y aura pas de désastre politique. Il y aura encore une lueur d'espoir pour continuer à lutter pour nous tous et surtout pour nos élèves et nos étudiants. Merci.
Amen to that. Absolutely. Denise?
I will be fast.
It's all right? We can go a bit over, but not much.
I really appreciated the context that you made, that we need to capitalize on people's feelings. I agree with you. I don't think we do that well enough. But there's one thing that we know in the United States. Most people love their public schools. Most people send their children to public schools, and they have memories of their own public school. So I believe that we need to capitalize on that, that people really have an interest in our public schools. Now, our public schools aren't perfect either, but it depends on all of us. And I believe, it depends on all sides of this conversation to be coming together, collaborating, and talking about how can we all have a responsibility to ensure that there is a quality public school in every child's neighborhood, at the end of every block, because that's really what it's all about. Every student deserves the best public school.
Thank you. Fatima?
Yo quería contestar un poco con lo que dice los compañeros de Reino Unido. Yo decía hoy, ellos pueden ser los vencedores, pero no creo que van a seguir siendo vencedores. Y si no va a ser para nuestra generación, va a ser para la generación futura, pero quiero tener la certeza que estoy del lado cierto y luchando para que ellos no sigan siendo vencedores. Y yo creo que es esta creencia que nos hace mover y luchar siempre donde quiera que estemos, ¿no? Cuanto a lo que habla el compañero de la UNESCO, en todos esos países que estamos teniendo este revés, este reviravolta, no tem uma questão de qualidade para todos, tem uma questão de educação para poucos diferenciada utilizando los recursos públicos y del Estado, y una educación de menos calidad para la gran mayoría de su gente. Quanto a los sindicatos, mira, los sindicatos no son partidos políticos y no son partidarios. Los sindicatos es una organización que representa todas sus corporaciones, sus diferentes afiliaciones partidarias adentro. Pero los sindicatos no son neutrales. Y no ser neutrales es ser como somos en cuanto sindicato. Tenemos posición sobre todas las grandes cuestiones del país y actuar como defensa de soberanía de nuestra gente y de nuestros países. Entonces, tener muy claro este límite de lo que es ser organización sindical, lo que es ser organización política y que es ser una organización sindical, pero con posiciones sobre los grandes temas y sobre las grandes cuestiones nacionales, internacionales y del mundo. O sea, pensar localmente, pero agir globalmente, y por esto nos articulamos. Y por último decir, educar no es doutrinar. Mira, lo que quieren esta gente es que pasa a ser una doutrina en función de las posverdades que ellos están defendiendo ahora. Yo creo que este concepto de posverdad es muy nuevo y que ainda todavía estamos elaborando, estamos aprofundizando. Porque decimos, la verdad es la nuestra, pero ellos también pueden decir, la verdad es la nuestra. Entonces son conceptos de posverdad que la verdad que estamos ainda conceituando mejor en su conjunto. O sea, ¿quién tiene la verdad? ¿Ellos o nosotros? Entonces, ¿qué podemos decir? Antes teníamos la verdad y hoy ellos no tienen, somos posverdad. Y yo creo que, como habló Chile, no tenemos ainda esto definido. Los tiempos van a ser. Y que es un tiempo de, podemos decir que este revés que estamos teniendo en la política mundial, en esta ascensión de las ideas de derecha, ven desde 2013. Y de ahí los cambios son necesarios. Yo veo en Brasil hoy, la derecha está avergonzada. En las calles que la derecha ocupó de 2013 para dar el golpe, hoy no están más en la calle. Quien está son los luchadores sociales, somos nosotros que estaban contra el golpe. Y muchos de aquellos que apoyaron el golpe, después de los desastres que están siendo cometidos ahora, están en la casa o también están viniendo a la calle con nosotros. Entonces yo creo que estamos en conceptos en construcción, pero tengo la claridad. El camino que estamos siguiendo es el camino correcto porque defendemos soberanía y autonomía de nuestros pueblos.
Okay, we're going to finish now because lunch calls, but I'll just finish with a story. First of all, I'd like to thank the panellists. I'm sure you would as well. I'd like to thank the panellists who've given such a good answer to a difficult question. And to many difficult questions. But the thing I've answered, I'm the president of the TUC in the UK at the moment, and we have a meeting of the General Council, which is a big meeting of all the unions. And recently, the TUC did a short film which showed that actually the belief in the UK amongst many people is that people on welfare are scroungers, they're immigrants, they're work shy, and actually what the film showed is the majority of people, the vast majority of people on welfare are in work, but we're in a low-wage economy, they do 2 or 3 jobs, they cannot make ends meet, so they need extra money to top up their wages. But what the film started with was, is this what you believe about welfare? And it had a little dog listening to people saying, welfare payments, they're just for those immigrants, or those are for those people who've got 10 children, they should have less children, or they're for scroungers, and saying, oh, that's very interesting, and listening to all of this, and then actually giving the facts. And one General Secretary said very strongly at the end of the film, we cannot show that film to anybody, we can't let that film be shown, because people who are saying those things don't know the facts. When they know the facts, they won't say those things anymore. And what I think we have to realise in the post-truth society is that it's not enough just to tell them the facts. We have to understand why people believe those things, listen to what they say, and then counter that powerfully with facts, but also with, as that person said, alternative principles. It's not enough for the left any longer to counter post-truth and alt-right propaganda with facts. We have to be equally passionate in our rebuttal, equally sure of our principles, and use both of those with facts to make the arguments, because facts do not counter ideology. Our ideology has got to be strong, our facts have got to be strong, we have to present them effectively and passionately, And we have to do that, and that's a complex thing to do. And we have to understand that when we do it, the right will play dirty, because they always do. Thanks very much.
So thank you all very much. I think we all feel very honored and privileged to have had this session with such insightful, committed leaders who have so much going on in their own countries, but they took the time to be with us. So thank you very much. Following up on Mary's last statement in terms of, how do we communicate this? How do we present this? We do have some interesting trainings that are going on actually in the Mies auditorium. You're going into lunch where the Ed Chats and the podcasts are happening, but also check out in the Mies, we have a comms training with some specialists that can help you in terms of how do you speak with the press about these types of issues, in terms of how do you best communicate. We have something on presentations as well, different ways of doing presentations to get your message across. And then we have, again, a whole nother session of fantastic workshops for you, led by teachers, EI leaders themselves, about the strategies that they're taking forward. Please join me again in thanking the panel, and you're off to lunch. Thank you very much. See you back here at 4.